Good morning, everyone. It's Paula, and I hope you are having a wonderful Thanksgiving. Today, I want to talk really quickly about an itch that I have been wanting to scratch really bad lately, and that is depotting. A lot of you guys know I have about 12 magnetic palettes. I first discovered depotting years ago through watching YouTube videos, and once I realized that I could buy a magnetic palette and depot powder products, I went through a phase where I was addicted and I was buying lots and lots of magnetic palettes and depotting like crazy. I loved how much more space it cleared up. I felt like a little mad scientist and I was having a blast. And at one point I realized that I wasn't actually using the products after I depotted them, and it kind of became a little powder product graveyard. And so I cut myself off a few years ago. It was kind of around the same time I was discovering the panning community, and I just told myself, like, you should actually use some of these depotted products rather than buying more palettes and filling them up. Just cut yourself off at the number of 12 palettes, and when you've used something up, then you can depot something again. So I've kind of suppressed the urges for a while now, and since doing that magnetic palette reorganization video and kind of planning my Pan That palette for next year, I'm starting to think about all the space I'm gonna have and what can I fill it with, and I've been obsessing over it. So I thought I'd do a quick video where I show you guys what I would depot next once I have space in my magnetic palettes, kind of like a fantasy video for Miss Paula over here. So let's talk about some things. The first thing that I would depot without a doubt, once I have the space, not if, once I have the space, the first thing that I would depot without a doubt is my Too Faced Natural Face Palette. This was my Pan That palette for the year 2017. And of course, as in all Paula projects, it was not a home run. There are 2 powder products remaining. These 4 pans have been panned completely, but this blush and this bronzing veil, it's a very subtle bronzer, are remaining. And I would love to just take those 2 out, put them in a Z palette, and toss this packaging. So once the space clears for those 2 pans, this will be number 1, without a doubt. But let's say I have more space. I know what I'm gonna do after that because my plans are much bigger than my reality all the time. Another habit that I had gotten into before getting serious about project panning is face palettes. Any kind of palette that had a ton of face products, I was extremely unrealistic about what I should be buying and how much I could actually use up and how long it would take me to use up. And what I'm finding is that because of project panning, I am not touching these face palettes at all, because to pan one blush is intimidating enough, let alone panning an entire palette full of blushes or bronzers or highlighters. And so in my mind, at least at this point right now, I'm thinking it would be much less daunting to kind of depot these palettes, break them up, and then tackle them one product at a time, rather than to look at the entire palette as a panning project. So let me give you some examples. This Too Faced Love Flush palette, great products, good quality blushes, a great variety that I think I could make work for my skin tone. Like, I don't think there's a shade here that I just cannot use with my skin tone, but I don't reach for this. I do not reach for this at all. To pull this gigantic palette out and keep it in my bathroom is just overwhelming to me in some respects, so I don't use it. Plus, I've been panning one blush for this year and one blush for last year, and I'm still not done with that, so why would I even pull this out? I think it would be a lot easier to take one of these as a single and work on it than have all of them. Not to mention, I do have 3 singles of these shades. I think I have Love Hangover, and like maybe these 2 in little mini singles as well. So I just don't ever reach for this, ever. I'd rather depot it. I've seen people depot it on Instagram, and I know it's possible, so I'd rather do it that way. Similarly, the Too Faced, the Little Black Book of Bronzers, I never reach for this. It is way too overwhelming to look at this entire palette of bronzers. Plus, this palette takes up a ton of space. Somebody's fingernail dug into there. This palette takes up a ton of space. There's a lot of real estate that's not being utilized in this palette, and I'd rather just stick this in a Z palette and put one of these in a project and use it up. I don't think it would be that hard. These pans are, you know, deluxe size. And so I think if I did that, they would get used, definitely. So this would be at the forefront of the list of things to depot. I've told this embarrassing story before, but I'm gonna tell it again because I love to humiliate myself. I not only have one Benefit Real Cheeky Party palette, I have two. It is entirely embarrassing, and I never use either of them. I think this was kind of one of those wake-up calls for me where I was a little out of control. So 4 blushes and a bronzer, and I never reach for it ever. Same excuse. It's just too overwhelming. I don't want this sitting in my bathroom. I'd rather just work on a single, all that stuff. I'd love to depot this, put it in a palette, and use one blush at a time and focus on it until it's gone. Okay, I think you get my picture with the face palette problem that I have. Those would definitely be ones to depot first. But let's start talking about eyeshadows. If I had the opportunity to depot some eyeshadows, there are 2 categories of eyeshadows that I would love to depot. The first one is these Wet n Wild trios. You guys know that these baby palettes are another graveyard product for me that I just don't reach for. The product themselves is great. There's nothing wrong with them, but I don't reach for these. I reach for singles, I reach for palettes, I don't reach for little trios and quads. So I think these would get a lot more use if they were depotted and alongside many, many other depotted singles in a self-made palette, in a self-made magnetic palette, than in these little trios. So these would definitely get depotted as eyeshadows. Okay, the final category of products I would depot first if I had the space in my magnetic palettes are all of these cardboardy eyeshadow palettes. I have the Shady Lady from The Balm. This was a limited edition palette that I like. I mean, this kind of color story is really on trend right now, kind of cool toned neutrals. Not reaching for it. I think I would get a lot more use out of these if they were depotted into magnetic palettes. I'm kind of surprised I feel this way, and it's only because of seeing other people do it that I realize how smart it is. But as much as I love my ColourPop little 12 pan palettes, there's a part of me that is really, really tempted to depot all of them and kind of see them all together in a color order from like lightest to darkest and see how many dupes I just keep buying over and over within these palettes. Like how many vanilla highlight shades, how many mid-tone crease shades do I just keep buying over and over in these palettes, because they make a lot of sense in the palette as a single-use item, but all together I just keep buying them over and over. I really think that would help me to like take it home that I should stop buying these. Plus, when I first started depotting, I didn't realize how much value there was and what you could really do with your makeup collection with depotted eyeshadows. Like once I placed them in the palette, I kind of felt like that was where they would stay. That was kind of the end of the story. But it wasn't until I met so many amazing project panners through the Instagram panning community that I realized, no, that's not the end of it. That's where it just begins. Then you can start moving things around, figuring out what your color story is for that moment, whether that moment is a day, a week, or the year. And then moving things around as you need to. That's the brilliance of these depotted shadows. And for some reason, it took seeing other project panners. There's somebody in particular that comes to mind. It is my friend Abby. Her Instagram handle or account is AbbyZ66, and this girl is brilliant. She's depotted everything. It doesn't matter how beautiful the packaging is. As soon as she can, she depots it, because then she can create her own custom palettes. And the second something new comes out that she is craving, she goes right to her singles and creates the palette with her singles. And that urge to have that new palette goes down. It works for her time and time and time again. I've watched her recreate every new release that she has craved, and she resists buying it because of that. It is brilliant. Abby has been so inspirational for reminding me the value in moving your depotted shadows around in your magnetic palettes to re-inspire yourself with the makeup you have. And that's something I need to keep working on, obviously, because I'm still buying a ton of eyeshadows. So I think I would depot these ColourPop eyeshadows and really start moving them around to create a palette that works for me for that day or for that week. And similarly, my Juvia's Place palettes, I love these palettes, they're really good, but sometimes I don't feel like they alone are a complete eye look for me. So, but together or with other singles, they are wonderful, wonderful shadows that I love to use. I did a 1 week 1 palette with this Saharan, yeah, this is the Saharan 1, and it was the only palette I used. It can stand alone, but like this Zulu palette, I never use. And I don't feel like this palette stands alone for me personally. I would have to bring in other shadows. Each one of these shadows are great on their own, but if I pop them out of this palette into a magnetic palette and move them around with some of the other shadows I already have, I think I would get a ton more use out of these eyeshadows individually. I also have the Saharan 2, which, let me see, what does that look like? I don't even remember. Yeah, no, I would need to add a couple more shadows into this one as well, personally, something lighter than these that I can use to blend out in my transition, and maybe even something deeper. That one might be good enough, but maybe like a deeper brown or a black. But yeah, I think I would get a ton more use out of these if I depotted them. So I'm gonna stop talking. I think you guys get my point. I have a long list of things I would like to depot once I have made some space, and I'm feeling very motivated right now to start, and actually it's been going on for about a year. I've been really having the urge to start using up these older powders that I have previously depotted but not really used since I depotted them, and to start using them, enjoying them, moving them out as individual pans, and depotting some of these things that I have sitting around and I'm not using and enjoying. So that is kind of thinking forward to 2019, kind of some future goals, and to kind of keep myself focused on why I am doing what I'm doing, because I need to use up some stuff so that I can make room for more. And this video is my own personal reminder. Do you guys love to depot? Do you guys love to recreate new releases and kind of satiate your urge to buy that new release by moving your depotted shadows around in your palettes like Abby? I think Abby is so brilliant for doing that, and she is such an inspiration to so many of us. So go check out her Instagram account. You will love her as much as I do. All right, have a happy Thanksgiving, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.